My name's Laura, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who I am and what I do, and then I'm going to get into some frequently asked questions when it comes to dieting. Now, appropriate time of year, obviously coming to the end of 2021 and heading into 2022, this is a time where a lot of people start to reflect on their personal habits when it comes to their diet, because maybe they're not seeing the results that they want. Maybe they're in a place where they're not quite happy with how they look or how they feel, and they know that New Year is a perfect time to start to make some changes. So without further ado, who am I and what do I do? So my name is Laura Hughes, and I am probably best described as a nutrition and lifestyle coach, but it kind of goes beyond that. So I tend to find that I have ladies that come to me that want to lose weight, but there's always more to it than that. It's never just specifically about being lighter on the scale, and oftentimes it's more to do with a lack of self-esteem or a lack of confidence and feeling held back in other areas of their lives. And a lot of this can come from, or it's perpetuated by the whole diet industry and trying to lose weight in the past, and the method perhaps not being the right one for them, and then feeling like a failure, losing confidence in themselves. So what I do is help you understand what it is that you need to do to actually get a result without specific rules. We start to create boundaries for you rather than strict guidelines, and help you create a lifestyle that actually suits how you want to live, and allows you to get the result that you want. So hopefully that kind of describes in a little bit of a nutshell what I do and my coaching process. It's not just about looking at food, it's about looking at the way that you want to live, how you want to feel, how you want to look, and bringing that all together to create the right method for you. So let's get into the frequently asked questions when it comes to dieting. So the first question I have is, should you weigh yourself often? Now, obviously, I think it's good to have an indicator of whether your body composition is changing, whether you do that through scale weight, whether you do that through pictures, whether you do that through how your clothes fit, or measurements. It's nice to have something that's tangible in terms of, are we making progress or not? Now, scale is highly subjective. If you're somebody that has a fear around the scale, personally, I would question why that is. What do you associate with the scale? Like, what's the narrative that you're telling yourself in that situation? Is it that your weight is too high? Is it that this number is too heavy? And I would look at, again, why you associate that number with being too heavy. Because it's all relative. It's relative to your height, to your muscle mass, to your body size. Are you somebody that is a little bit broader? Are you somebody that's more athletic? And really start to kind of unravel why that potentially might be. With scale, I would always say that it's better to weigh more frequently than less frequently, if that's going to be your method of measuring progress, or if that's going to be the way that you measure your progress. And the reason for this is that your scale is not always going to be trending down if you're dieting. There's going to be certain things that are going to influence scale weight, whether that's stress, whether that's where you're at in your cyclical hormonal cycle. That's going to influence water retention, is going to perhaps influence inflammation, your eating habits, and whether perhaps over some days you eat a little bit more, which means you sit a little bit heavier. But the point really is with scale weight is just so that you can identify trends and how things change. I personally would say it's better to weigh more frequently, but do it over the course of a month. So when you have a month's worth of data, then you can look at what's the typical trend when I'm in the luteal phase of my cycle versus when I'm in the follicular phase of my cycle, when hormones are higher versus when hormones are lower. Then you start to paint a picture of, okay, well, this is where I'm at when this happens. And then you gain some perspective and it becomes less scary. The second question that I have is, should you cut out fats? Now, I think this is very specific to fats, perhaps because, again, of a story that might have been in the media, or a comment that might have been made by a friend, a family member, or even just an acquaintance in terms of dieting. But when it comes to fat loss or weight loss specifically, you don't have to cut out anything. You don't have to cut out fats, carbs, or obviously proteins, but protein is typically not discussed as something that you need to cut out because it's perceived as something that is actually more beneficial. But in terms of fats specifically, you don't have to cut anything out. When it comes to fat loss and weight loss, the most important thing is making sure that your calories are in balance. And what I mean by that is if your goal is fat loss, then you need to make sure that you're in a calorie deficit. If your goal is maintenance, you need to be eating there or thereabouts the right amount of food for how many calories you're expending in a day. And then obviously if your goal is weight gain, you need to be eating slightly more than you need in a day. But when it comes to specific macronutrients, you don't need to cut anything out. The third question is, if your goal is weight loss, do you need to drink water before every meal? Now, this is something that I would say, no, you don't have to specifically drink water before every meal. However, having a hydration target throughout the day might be helpful, particularly because people are notoriously bad at drinking water. Or even just keeping themselves hydrated, especially as you get older, perhaps you start to drink more things like teas and coffees and they become your source of hydration. So it's really important that you do at least prioritize getting in hydration throughout the day, but it doesn't have to specifically be before or after meals or at any specific timings. Next question is, if you eat too much at lunchtime, should you skip your evening meal? This again is highly individual. If you feel that you've eaten too much at one particular meal, again, I would kind of question, relative to what? Is it in terms of your tracking calories, you've eaten too much? If you're tracking your calories and you've kind of consumed over what you need to be eating in that day, I personally wouldn't recommend that you go to bed hungry as a result of that. It would just be a case of just being more mindful when it comes to the next meal or the next time. Certain people like to do higher calories in the middle part of the day and go slightly fewer calories at breakfast and the evening meal just because that works better for their lifestyle. So there's no right or wrong way in terms of saying you have to eat X amount of calories or X amount of food at certain times of the day. You just have to find out what works best for you. Next question is, should you keep a food diary if your goal is fat loss? Again, this one's not specifically necessary for everybody to do if your goal is fat loss. There are other ways of monitoring your intake, but measuring, what you're actually consuming can give you a true representation of total calories, because it can be really easy to think that you're eating fewer calories than you actually are, especially if you're somebody that snacks or you pick up food throughout the day. That's when it can be really handy to keep a food diary so that then you can make informed decisions about what you need to do to manipulate your calories if your goal is fat loss. And then final question is, do you need to count calories to lose weight? Now, this is something that, again, is highly subjective. You don't have to count calories if it works for you, and that's the best way for you to be held accountable to how much you're actually consuming. It's a really great option. But again, it kind of depends where you're at mentally, if this is something that you've done in the past. Providing that you're in a kind of a stable place when it comes to weight loss and you're just looking at this objectively in terms of your food, counting calories is a really fantastic way to get you to your goal quicker, because then you have as much accuracy as you can. So that is the last of the questions. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any other questions, please do post in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up and like and subscribe.